remote cantonment of Chakrata, nestled in the mountains of Uttarakhand, operates one of India's most enigmatic and elite military units, the Special Frontier Force, or the SFF. Also known as the Vikas Battalions or Establishment 22, this extraordinary paramilitary force represents a unique convergence of geopolitical necessity, Cold War intrigue, and the indomitable spirit of Tibetan warriors who found their purpose in defending their adopted homeland. In today's TAC Explained, we uncover the untold story of India's Special Frontier Force, an elite ghost army born from the ashes of one of the nation's greatest military setbacks and transformed into one of its most potent weapons against Chinese aggression. The idea behind the Special Frontier Force traces its origins back to the times of the British colonial era. During the 19th and the early 20th centuries, when the British and Russian empires were competing for influence in Central Asia, or what we call the Great Game, the British Indian Army saw the value of recruiting Tibetans as spies and scouts. Their deep knowledge of the Himalayas and close ties with the local communities made them ideal for gathering intelligence in the region. This legacy of covert Tibetan involvement in Himalayan intelligence operations established both the psychological and the operational precedent for what would later become a formal, specialized military force following India's independence. The transformation from colonial intelligence assets to a modern special operations force began during the 1950s as the Cold War's ideological battle lines extended into the Himalayan region. Following China's annexation of Tibet in the 1950s and the subsequent 1959 Tibetan uprising that forced the 14th Dalai Lama into exile, the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, recognized an opportunity to establish a covert resistance movement against Chinese communist expansion. The CIA worked in collaboration with India's Intelligence Bureau, or the IB, under the leadership of B.N. Malik, established training facilities in Mustang, Nepal, a region geographically and culturally very close to Tibet. This Mustang base became the crucible where Tibetan guerrillas were trained in unconventional war techniques, with thousands of fighters receiving instructions not only in Nepal but also at American facilities in Okinawa, including the Kadena Air Base. The driving force behind this collaboration was multifaceted. B.N. Malik, the chief, viewed the Khampa Tibetans as potentially valuable assets similar to the Gurkha regiments, foreign-born but fiercely loyal fighters ideal for elite military units. Meanwhile, Biju Patnaik, the former Royal Indian Air Force pilot who later went on to become the Chief Minister of Odisha, provided crucial logistical support and political backing, leveraging his wartime aviation experience to facilitate operations. The involvement of Gyalo Thonduk, the Dalai Lama's brother, proved instrumental in recruitment and mediation between the various stakeholders. When the first contingent of 5,000 Tibetan fighters arrived in Dehradun, it was under his guidance that they were integrated into this emerging forces structure. The defeat suffered by Indian forces during the 1962 Sino-Indian War provided the catalyst for the formal establishment of the Special Frontier Force. This is when the Chinese military's deep penetration into the Indian territory across the Himalayan frontier had exposed critical vulnerabilities in India's high-altitude defense capabilities and highlighted the urgent need for specialized mountain warfare units. The concept of such a force had been proposed earlier by General K.S. Thimayya, the former Chief of Army Staff, during his tenure from 1957 to 1961. But it was only until the strategic shock of the 1962 defeat when the Nehru government approved the creation of SFF. In November 1962, coinciding symbolically with Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's birthday, the Indian government formally raised this unit under the designation Establishment 22. This numerical designation was derived from the military background of the force's first Major General General Sujan Singh Uban, who had previously commanded the 22nd Mountain Regiment of the Royal Indian Artillery during World War II. Uban brought exceptional credentials to this role, having long served with the British Long Range Desert Group, or the LRDG, and accumulated extensive experience in irregular warfare operations across the diverse theaters. In 1962, a tripartite agreement was reached between the CIA, the IB, and Chusi Gangruk, the Tibetan resistance organization, formalizing this collaborative network. The representation of the Tibetan interests were legendary leaders such as Gompo Tashi, Andruksan, and Jogo Namgyal Dorji, while the CIA provided an 8-member training team led by USMC Colonel Wayne Stanford, who had architected their entire guerrilla training programs. Now, the choice of Chakrata as the primary training and operational base was strategically astute. This remote Himalayan location, with its existing Tibetan population and extreme isolation, provided the perfect environment for developing and testing unconventional warfare capabilities while maintaining operational security. When Prime Minister Nehru visited the training facility in September 1963, he was reportedly moved by the sight of disciplined Tibetan soldiers in formation accepting a rose from Uban's garden and expressing hope that they would return to a free Tibet. The transformation from Establishment 22 to the Special Frontier Force occurred in 1967 to 68, marking a significant expansion and formalization of the unit's capabilities. This rebranding coincided with the establishment of 6 battalions known as the Vikas battalions, the introduction of airborne training programs at Agra and Saraswat, and the creation of dedicated aviation support through the Aviation Research Center, or the ARC. Unlike conventional military forces, the SFF operates directly under the Cabinet Secretariat of India, with operational control exercised by the Research and Analysis Wing, or as we know it as RAW, India's external intelligence agency. This arrangement ensures direct political oversight while maintaining the operational flexibility necessary for covert missions. The force is commanded by an Inspector General or IG holding rank of Major General, typically deputed from the Indian Army. The total strength of the SFF is classified, but estimates suggest that approximately 4,000 to 5,000 personnel organized across 6 to 7 battalions, each comprising of 600 to 800 soldiers. The composition of the SFF reflects both its historical roots and the evolving strategic purpose. Initially formed with Tibetan refugees, primarily the Khampas, famed for their martial traditions and fierce resistance to the Chinese rule or China's communist expansion, the force later expanded to include other Himalayan communities with comparable skills and cultural backgrounds. The Khampa recruits brought more than just physical toughness and experience with high altitude terrain. Many were deeply motivated by an ideological commitment to oppose China's occupation of Tibet. Having fled after the failed 1957 uprising, they arrived not only with intimate knowledge of Chinese military tactics, but also with an unshakable resolve to continue their fight from exile. Training in the SFF is focused above all on high altitude combat. Soldiers are taught to fight and survive at heights of over 20,000 feet, undergoing intense acclimatization in areas like Ladakh and Himachal Pradesh. This not only prepares them physically for thin air conditions, but also sharpens the tactical edge needed for prolonged missions in such extreme settings. Guerrilla warfare is another core part of their preparation, combining CIA-developed techniques from the Cold War with local innovations. SFF troops learned how to carry out sabotage missions, operate deep behind enemy lines, and survive when heavily outnumbered. They are also trained in airborne operations, including both standard parachuting and more advanced insertion methods like HALO, or the high altitude low opening, and HAHO, high altitude high opening jump. These allow them to be deployed quickly and secretly into areas where regular forces cannot reach. Rounding out their trainings are specialized skills like combat, skiing, rock climbing, mountaineering, demolitions, and the use of advanced communication systems, making the SFF one of India's most versatile and capable military units. The SFF's first major operational deployment came during the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, where approximately 3,000 SFF personnel were quietly inserted into Chittagong Hill Tract as part of Operation Eagle. This deployment represented both a test of the force's capabilities and a demonstration of its potential strategic value. Operating behind Pakistani lines, SFF units conducted a sustained campaign of sabotage and harassment that significantly disrupted Pakistan's military operations. Their targets included supply routes, communication centers, ammunition dumps, and command facilities, creating a persistent threat that forced Pakistani forces to divert resources from the frontline operations to protect their rear areas. The force's ability to operate independently in hostile territory while maintaining coordination with conventional forces demonstrated the potential of well-trained special operating units. The deployment of SFF personnel during Operation Blue Star, the controversial 1984 military action on the Golden Temple in Amritsar, represents one of the more contentious chapters in the force's history. While details remain classified, it is known that SFF units provide tactical support and specialized capabilities during the complex urban warfare operations required to neutralize militant positions within the temple complex. During the 1999 Kargil War, the Special Frontier Forces' specialized high-altitude capabilities proved invaluable in supporting conventional military operations. SFF units were tasked with reconnaissance, pathfinding, and logistics support in areas where regular troops faced significant challenges due to the altitude and the terrain. The force's pathfinding capabilities helped identify routes for conventional forces and equipment, while the logistics expertise enabled the establishment of supply lines in seemingly impossible terrain. While not publicly acknowledged, SFF involvement in the 2017 Doklam Standoff with China near Bhutan exemplifies the force's role in contemporary strategic competition. The deployment of specialized units capable of operating in disputed border areas provides Indian decision makers with options for escalation control and strategic signaling. The ability to maintain a covert presence in sensitive areas while conducting intelligence and reconnaissance operations enables India to monitor Chinese activities and respond to provocations without immediately escalating to conventional military confrontation. This represents a significant strategic asset in managing complex border disputes. Finally, the 2020 border confrontations with China in eastern Ladakh marked a watershed moment in the public recognition of the SFF. The successful Operation Snow Leopard, conducted between August 29 and 31 of 2020, saw SFF units execute a daring preemptive action to occupy key heights including Blacktop, Helmet Top, and the Gurung Hill along the southern bank of the Pangong Tso. This operation prevented Chinese advances and surprised the PLA forces, fundamentally altering the tactical balance in the region and actually forced China to return to the negotiation table. The success of this operation demonstrated both the continued effectiveness of the SFF and the strategic value in maintaining such specialized high-altitude forces. However, the success came at a cost. With the death of company leader Naima Tenzin, a 51-year-old Tibetan veteran who was killed by a landmine during this operation. His funeral, conducted with both Tibetan and Indian flags, represented one of the rare public acknowledgements of SFF's service and their sacrifice. This public recognition marked a significant shift in the official attitude towards the force, with government officials and military leaders openly acknowledging SFF's contributions for the first time in decades. The operation also highlighted the continued relevance of the force's original mission, countering Chinese expansion while maintaining operational flexibility and strategic ambiguity. The SFF's mission has evolved considerably. Originally conceived to wage covert operations against China and support Tibetan resistance, its role has now shifted towards broader high-altitude reconnaissance and border defense. As India assumed full responsibility for the force after the withdrawal of CIA support in the 1970s, doctrine and operations had to be reoriented to fit national objectives rather than Cold War proxy agendas. Yet, the SFF has remained a potent instrument, most notably during the 1971 Bangladesh War, the Kargil conflict, and the 2020 Ladakh standoff, proving time and again its value in missions that require stealth, endurance, and adaptability to extreme terrain. As India faces a shifting strategic landscape along its Himalayan frontiers, the SFF remains vital not just as military asset but a symbol of silent service rendered under the harshest conditions. This is Garima and you are watching the Asian Chronicle.